Ernest Hemingway famously wrote up to 47 alternate endings for his definitive war novel, A Farewell to Arms. Finding the exact right words and knowing exactly which ones to leave out was an obsessive matter of literary life and death for the author. The surface of the story follows a tragic World War I romance between an American ambulance driver and an English nurse on the Italian front. These events were drawn from Hemingway's own wartime service, with the nurse character inspired by his real-life relationship with Agnes von Karowski. The novel uses this historical frame to house a psychological study of what happens when a person's interior world goes quiet. Hemingway's minimalist prose style relies on short, declarative sentences that communicate a sense of emotional detachment. Critics have used this sparse style to argue that the protagonist is cold and that the female lead lacks the agency of a fully realized character. Yet the novel's impact was immediate, leading to its suppression in several countries and an outright ban by the fascist regime in Italy. Understanding why this text is considered a masterpiece requires us to look at what is actively missing from the page. Hemingway's Iceberg Theory dictates the mechanics of how the story is told. The explicit text represents only the 10% visible above the waterline. The remaining 90% exists as unwritten subtext, leaving the character's deepest traumas to be felt rather than stated. This theory explains the protagonist's flat narration. The writing provides a factual skeleton of his experience, while the internal shock of the war remains hidden beneath the words. By withholding emotional adjectives, Hemingway forces the reader to fill the silence with their own recognition of the character's pain. In the combat sequences on the Italian front, the protagonist's emotional detachment mirrors Hemingway's own observations of soldiers in the field. This coldness aligns with the psychological numbness associated with modern understandings of PTSD. During the chaotic military retreat, the story removes the traditional language of patriotism and noble sacrifice. The narrative replaces the romanticized image of war with the reality of a world where survival is a matter of chance. Contemporary scholarship has re-evaluated Catherine Barclay, reading her as a woman responding to her psychological wounds. Catherine speaks of her fiancé being killed in battle and shares a recurring fear of the rain, an omen she associates with the suddenness of death. Her total focus on the relationship functions as a deliberate effort to create a stable, private logic while the world around her collapses. This makes her devotion a calculated act of resilience, positioning her as the most stoic participant. The couple eventually flees to a quiet mountain village in Switzerland, attempting to build a sanctuary away from the war. But the recurring motif of heavy rain continues to haunt the text, consistently signaling that misfortune is ultimately unavoidable. The book ends with Catherine's death in childbirth, a biological tragedy that occurs without divine justice or heroic meaning. In the final scene, the protagonist walks back to his hotel in the rain. Hemingway describes this using only a few plain, factual sentences. Hemingway's obsessive revision process eventually yielded a conclusion that describes nothing but the weather. By trusting that the previous 300 pages had done their work, he left the reader to process the impact of that final solitary walk.